Everybody, and welcome back to Your Property Podcast. My name is Michelle Cairns, and with us today we've got Susannah Cole from the Good Property Company. Hey, Susannah.
Nice to be here, and thank you for inviting me on. I'm really glad to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on, and you have been in the industry for many, many years and seen lots of different turns in the market and lots of different strategies. So I'm really excited to have you on today to just talk about your journey, what's been happening, and where you are now. So let's get started. Do you want to just give a brief introduction for people who've not come across you before?
Okay. Super brief. Susannah Cole, the Good Property Company, and I started just when Lehman Brothers was crashing. So when people are talking about this economy, I'm like, amateur level, because I took the day off to listen to the Lehman Brothers. I mean, it was awful, but it was fascinating, and just listened to the radio all day long. So this will be my second recession that we're heading through. I started as head of household, so I didn't have a huge amount of money because, there's only plan A, there wasn't plan B. And I knew that in order to be able to afford to spend more time with my family and to have a future that wasn't predicated upon retiring at 67 and who's going to trust them with our pensions, I certainly didn't. Where there's muck, there's brass. I wanted to own managing my own finances. So I started off pulling some cash out my own property, thought I was just going to do it myself, quickly ran out of money like we all do, went into deal packaging, went into joint venture flipping, did joint venture flipping for a long time, did deal packaging for a long time, raised millions of pounds of money, paid it all back, and built my own property portfolio. So now I live half in Bristol, where I'm chatting to you today, and half in Barcelona, because I've got homes in both places, 9 minutes from the sea. So I'm glad I did it, but it was hard. Yes.
Well, no one said it would be easy, did they?
No.
And I think, there are some people who say, oh yeah, get rich quick. But for most people who certainly, they've spent a little bit of time in the industry, they can see that this is a long-term game.
Yes. Get wealthy steadily.
Yeah, it is. But for a lot of people, even though they understand it's a long-term game, it can be quite overwhelming at the beginning, not knowing where to start. And there's so much, advice and shiny pennies here and there. So it sounds like you've been through a few of those strategies. If you could start again, would you start with the same strategy?
Oh, the thing is, if I could start again, I'd know that it worked. So there was a couple of things. Definitely get good at one thing and get so although occasionally I got tempted by a shiny penny strategy, I kind of didn't. I'm quite good at compartmentalizing and saying, you over there, I'm going to keep you over there until I'm ready to focus on this. I need to get really good at this one thing and rinse and repeat, and then be able to expand it. So that was definitely one piece of advice. And I think the cornerstone to getting started in property when you're not sat with millions of pounds is being able to find those discounted deals. And when I was started going to property events and, be terrified, before you walk through the hotel door, you're like, oh, what do I know about property? Nothing. And feeling very sort of, this, imposter syndrome. They were talking about you can get a discounted deal, you can leave no money left in. And I was just thinking, nonsense, I don't believe you. Well, we did £45 million worth of those in Bristol, which is a really, really wealthy city, 217 deals, and an agreed purchase of 30 million quid. So now I know you can get those deals. And if you notice, we rinsed and repeated, and we just got very, very good at finding discounted deals. So don't do shiny penny, get very good at discounted deals. The strategies I looked at with excitement and discarded, and this may not be right for everybody, was I looked at rent to rent and thought, nah, I'm not going to do that. And my thinking was, I want to be able to buy the asset. I want the capital growth. I don't see that. Richard Branson always talks about protecting your downside while enjoying an unlimited upside. Well, to my mind, and I looked at rent to rent with super excitement and decided not to proceed with it, because you have to pay the landlord whether the tenants pay you or not. I've only had 2 tenants that have not paid me. Both have CCJs against them. And that's in, since 2008, 2009, thousands of tenants. But, that's because I'm really tight on financial management. So rent to rent felt to me like, hang on, you're becoming a glorified letting agent without any of the capital growth. So I didn't, I got super excited about it and then went, whoa, pull up the horses, kid. And then the other thing that I did to mitigate risk, although it was still scary, I only ever borrowed £1 million at any one time, which if you're listening to this and you're brand new to property, I promise you £1 million is probably only 3 houses these days, depending on the location you're in. And I did not borrow more than £1 million ever, because my figuring out was if it went horribly wrong and I had to go back to a day job, I'd have to, chunder away for the next 20 years to pay those people back, in a job, because I didn't ever want to. And so that honesty and that decency on that kind of, this is my responsibility to pay it back no matter what, meant, of course, people trusted me. So to go back to your question, because I've deviated, I've said stick at one thing and do well. And I'm saying deal sourcing is the number one tip I'd give to your guys at the beginning. Find discounted deals, because then you can flip, you can joint venture, you can deal package, you can buy, refurb, refinance, rent out, pull all your cash back out. I've done all of that. If I was to do it again and I knew that it was going to work, I would have borrowed a lot more money, because I knew it was going to work. But at the time, I really had to temper that with risk management. So it's a tricky stretch and a pull, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's interesting you say about the rent to rent and whether, you decided not to go ahead with it because you wanted to buy the asset.
Yes.
And I've done rent to rent before, and at the beginning, to be honest, I really didn't understand how to borrow money from, or even that was really an option. I might have heard about it, but that was something other people did. That was
Yeah.
not something that I did. So how did you bridge that gap from, did you always know that you could work with investors? You were just kind of lucky like that. That was okay, well, I want to own it. I can't, so I'm not going to go with that strategy.
I got lucky in a kind of, sometimes the things where you land not on your feet are actually useful. So I only ever had 4 corporate jobs. Prior to that, I ran a fair trade business in my 20s. I had 5 shops up in Scotland. And then I reckoned after 7 years of doing that, I probably, it was quite a good business, but I really need to learn some stuff. There's so much I don't know that I don't know, the Donald Rumsfeld. And I know I don't know, but I don't know what it is that I don't know. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, kid, get into a corporate job. And I did an MBA and stuff like that just to learn. So it was never about the money. It was always, I need to learn some stuff that I don't know that's missing. So my final job was marketing director of the SS Great Britain, which is here in Bristol. It's an iconic museum. It's the maritime heritage. And I was the marketing director. And pretty much after I got the job, my director, who's incredibly talented, rather eccentric, as you can imagine a museum director to be, said, oh, by the way, we've also given you the fundraising department. What? What? I had done fundraising, but through a corporate job, right, where you fill out forms. So I had an incredibly talented, particularly one person in the team was incredibly talented, a woman called Vanessa. Later on, we promoted her to director, and she taught me how to, she didn't teach me because I was technically her boss. She evidenced and showed me with her behavior and her professionalism how you fundraise. So I was going to things like the kind of National Association of Fundraisers, knowing very little about the subject, technically being somebody's boss, but really being really honest about it and saying, well, I don't know much about this. So as long as we hit the KPIs, let's learn together. So I was very lucky that I had actually had a grounding, for a charitable reason, of course, on how people might fundraise from high net worth individuals. And therefore, I think the main barrier, is this possible, was already broken down. And then the process barrier of how does this happen, 5 to 9 touch points, do your maths, was also there. And then, of course, everybody in Britain loves property. I mean, everybody wants, well, not everybody, people love, they're like, oh, you're in property. Oh, it must be so exciting. Homes under the hammer and all that stuff.
Yeah. Great British hobby, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Beanie. Yes.
So do you think that everything you've said is still relevant in the current market?
Oh my Lord. If I was starting now, I would be, and I am in some ways restarting. That's gorgeous. If I was starting now, knowing what I've known with my experience of millions of pounds worth of property, millions of pounds worth of investment, all paid back. I keep wanting to say that because it's super important. You go into it going, not my money. I would be so excited about the environment that we're in right now, because when they turn left, you turn right. When they turn right, you turn left. You do not want to be, I mean, flipping for the last few years, most people could do it. Do you know what I mean? Because the market rose. You know, I briefly shared with you that I had a sabbatical for 2.5 years. Now, on a 10 million portfolio, prices went up by 10% in a year. So I lay on a sofa and earn, you know, in excess of £1 million by recuperating as a cancer patient. You know, that's pretty good, isn't it? But when the market gets tough, that's when your skills come out. So now is exciting, because now you've got to be good at this, and you've got to learn your skills in your trade, and therefore you can differentiate yourself from others. This if you learn how to do this now, you're going to be fine in any marketplace. And of course, people will be selling, you know, unfortunately, some people, they won't have done their maths properly. And so the mortgage payments are going to be kind of difficult. Banks don't want to repossess, but nobody wants to get, you know, bad credit against themselves. So there are amazing opportunities.
And when you say when everyone goes left, you need to go right.
Yes. Or the other way around. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Where are we in the fog now? Where are we in the road?
We are at the point that there's a huge amount, we're all similar but different. We're at the point where there's a huge amount of noise. So don't listen to the noise, but do observe the underlying statistical trends. So look on all the different house pricing indexes, just to be aware. So your large economic understanding, you know, nationwide, all the UK price index, the consumer price index, you know, Halifax, all of that stuff. Understand what's happening. Understand what's happening with rents. Rents are going really, really high. And so my properties, they open them out. There's within 4 hours of being advertised, they close it, and then it's a waiting list within 4 hours of being advertised. So there's huge demand for rental properties. Yes, interest rate is going a bit higher. And then where we are is it's going to be patchy. So the same as 2008, in Bristol, which is a southern city, what happened in 2008, 2009 is like a little scared rabbit. Ooh, prices just froze for 4 years. They really didn't drop. Whereas in somewhere like Stoke-on-Trent, prices dropped. Bristol, prices froze for 3 to 4 years and then started climbing really quickly. Stoke-on-Trent took 10 years to come back. So I can't say where we're at now nationwide, because it's very locally based. So look at all your big stuff, and then look at your local streets, talk to your estate agents, understand the pricings right now, and get really in the weeds with understanding your local marketplace, and look at your economics within your local marketplace.
Yeah, it's so important just to see what's going on in your area, that and not, you know, if you're based down south but you're investing up north, or
Yes.
vice versa, it's completely different markets, of course.
But where we are, sorry, jumping in, is the pathway of the kind of amateur landlord. I'm doing this for a bit of a laugh. They call them weekend warriors, the auction houses, that they've got a proper, you know, like a customer avatar for them. They've now started to reduce, which is in a way great, because then you don't have competition at the estate agents and the auctions for the weekend warriors who've got day jobs and then are doing it up maybe as a married couple on the weekend. So you've got now the professional investors left. Well, that's great if you're buying, because the professional investors are just not going to buy above that. You know, I've been to auction and it went £1,000 over my asking price. Okay, next. You know, if it had been the home I wanted, I'd have been like, me. So you're now in a more professional marketplace. Great, be a professional.
So in terms of deal packaging, then, that you said, if, you know, people starting out, they're looking for discounted deals.
Yes.
How does that fit in with the current market? If the prices are turning, then
Yes.
how do we know what is a discount and what to do with it? What's a good strategy once we've secured a discounted property?
Agreed. So a couple of just tiny things to not pick people up on, but just identify. When you are entering this as a new person, the misnomer that people think is that it's discounted from the price offered. No, And we've actually bought discounted deals. Remember, we did 45 million pounds worth of property at an agreed purchase price of 30 million quid. That is 33% discounted, isn't it? It's a third off, right? It's pretty damn good. We've actually occasionally, not often, but occasionally bought properties more than the asking price. So it's not discounted from the asking price. It's discounted from the value. And you're quite right. If the value is moved. So number one, I don't care if a person's got 10, 20, 50 grand or 100 grand off asking price. It's the only figure we didn't ever record because it has no meaning. It's discounted against the valuation. And to do that, for you to be careful, 45 pieces of research. I've been saying this for a long time now, haven't I? Because if you discount it against one or two properties, well, you know, maybe you pick the wrong property. So 20 solds, 20 on the market, and 5 estate agent opinions. So how do you figure out if that is going to help you? Well, the 5 estate agent opinions, as long as you're not picking an estate agent who's a little bit too toppy, and within 20 minutes of talking to your estate agent, you'll know who's toppy and you know who's honest. I'm not going to name them, but we know the brand in Bristol who's toppy. I would never ask them for an opinion on a valuation because they're, should we call it excitable?
Optimistic.
They did a couple of years ago have a protest outside their shop in Southville, which did make me laugh because I was like, yeah. But so the first thing, so your estate agents are going to be so close to the market. You know, they know what's going on. So your 5 estate agent opinions, you're going to be bang on if you choose good ones. Solds, in a market that's changing, you got to be looking at solds in the last 3 months, maybe 6 months, depending on how quickly the market's changing. So that whereas in a flat market that's been flat for like 2 years, you can look back your data that 2 years, no big deal. So again, you got to know your local area. Is it flat? Is it rising? Is it dropping? By what rate of knots? And then change your time frame accordingly. And then on the market, well, you've got to be a bit more careful with that because you might still have some latent people thinking, oh, you know, I want 500 grand. And the estate agent is like, no, it's only going to sell for 450. And they're insisting to put it on, and the estate agent just puts it on saying, well, we'll drop them in 2 weeks' time. So you just be a bit more careful with that. But if you do that triangle of estate agents, solds, but mind your time frame and on the market, you're going to be able to value it correctly. And then learn what's happening in your local area. So I was enjoying reading your CV this morning on LinkedIn, and you're a French and Spanish teacher in another life, right? Well, teachers are a really good indicator of property prices. And I'll tell you why. Yeah, teachers, I mean, my mum was a teacher, my dad, well, was a professor. They're both retired now. So teachers generally, unless they come out of the industry, and I've had some students who came out the industry, out of teaching as well into property, teachers often, once they've decided to commit, and that is their vocation for them, they're in it for life. They're often steady people, quite measured, because they like routine and regularity and, you know, all the rest of it. And therefore, they've planned out their mortgages in advance. They often, not always, like their home to be quite, what would you say, indicative of part of who they are. You know, home is important, home and community, because they're based in a community, they're based at home, right? And when teachers go into a new part of town, so we had it here, but for Bristol people, Redlands used to be where teachers lived. It got too pricey, like really pricey. So they all moved over to St. George, because it was all Victorian Bayfront windows. Whereas 15 years earlier, St. George was very blue collar, but the teachers moved first, not the artists, the teachers. And I was like, get into St. George fast, because those are stable long-term buyers that are going to set a stable long-term pricing structure for that part of the area. So I did. I bought a bunch of houses in St. George, and almost every single one has tripled in value in about a decade. Because I bought them discounted.
That's good too.
So do you see how I'm like saying, like, look at what client groups are doing, you know, and listen to the little seeds of growth, or the kind of indicator, you know, when you go to your gym, what are the people around you saying about where they're buying houses, and listen to what the market is saying by listening to the people around you as well. So it's big picture, medium picture, and then micro picture.
Okay. Love it. Great tips. Okay, well, let's loop back to investors then. So
Yeah.
you obviously have lots of experience with investors. What are investors looking for now? What's their appetite like, and how have their expectations had to change given the changes in the market?
Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. The main thing an investor looks for is who you are before they invest in the deal. And you get with fundraising, you get a triangle. So if you think about the triangle with a peak at the top, the guys and girls at the top are the 5 million quid and above people with 5 million quid in their bank. They are going to be longer to incubate because they've got bigger risk. They're going to probably, normally my guys with 5 million quid and above put in 20% maximum to each of their, and they're going to choose 5 investment pots. And then once they've invested in you and you deliver, they're just rinse and repeat. In fact, my big investor used to be like, could you please hurry up and give us more deals? Okay. And then you've got the middle ones, people kind of 200 grand, 150 to 300 grand kind of thing. And then you've got the smaller people at kind of 10, 20, 30 up to maybe 50 or 100 grand, right? And although they're all obviously looking for a return on their investment, the number one thing they're looking for is my money safe? Am I going to get it back? So I think the first case you need to provide, and you can't guarantee, if you're borrowing money, you can't guarantee the money is safe because by its very nature, they are investing in a risky scenario, which is why you need to be mindful of some of the FCA regulation to do with joint ventures and high net worth individuals, PS 13.3. But because, of course, that's it's a variable opportunity. But the first thing you need to look at is how can I evidence within my best abilities that this is a safe project? So we used to do deal reports and we used to put in the 45 pieces of research and we used to just list it out. And then the second thing they want to know is kind of who are you? So I used to meet them in my home when I was starting. So anybody who's thinking I'll just start to get investors, and I only had a couple of houses myself, I used to show them my personal mortgage statement. I used to show them my salary when I was still working and working in the evenings. I would be really open book about everything. So they're wanting to see that they can trust you. And so number one is my money safe? And then number two is how much are you going to give me?
And do you think that you were talking about deal packaging and working with investors for people who are starting out and perhaps they don't have that track record or the credibility, or even they've got their own portfolio but they've never worked with investors before? Is it would you advise people to start with investors at the lower end where they've got maybe 50k, or is there just nothing stopping anybody going straight for the 5 million?
Yes. I think you cut it that triangle is inevitable. So if you are going to do your work in running a professional investment recruitment strategy, which is kind of what a fundraising strategy is, it's the same as going to the gym and doing squats, 3 sets of, sets of 6, whatever your program says, just do the work. You are inevitably going to end up with a triangle. You're going to end up with loads of people with small amounts of money, brilliant for refurbs. You're going to end up with a medium amount of people with the middle amount of money, and then you're going to end up with a small amount of people with the top amount of money. It's inevitable. Now, you can decide I'm not going to work with a certain segment within that, but why would you, even if you were new, say no to a £5 million person if you found them early? And my £5 million people were my best mentors in the early days, because once they were longer to recruit because they had more to lose. But once they recruited, we would meet up, they would give me business advice, they would kind of look at me working like a crazy woman, and then they'd be like, oh, thank goodness I can go home and play golf now. But they were people who'd built businesses and they were loving giving me advice and then leaving again, for me to do all the work. So I don't think you can just go for the £5 million people without at least encountering the 2 other tiers. Whether you then decide in your strategy to work with them or not is your decision. Me, I worked with all 3 categories because they had different uses, refurb, deposit in a house, obviously with the bank's permission, and then large scale projects and lots of private lending for 100% mortgage plus refurb. How's about that? So how many houses can you buy, as long as you're getting them discounted, if they are giving you 100% of the funding and they're funding you the refurb?
Oh,
infinite.
yes. And
Yes.
for people when you mentor people, I guess one of the main blocks people have is the fear of, losing the money or
Yes.
not being confident in their own deal, perhaps. So how do you work with people to overcome that? It's
Sure.
all the due
Well,
diligence, of course, but
yeah. On the not being confident in your own deal, I just I refer you back to the 45 pieces of research. So we have a spreadsheet of all the deals we ever did. And it would be about one, well, we were different. I liked to only go to deals I could already buy discounted. Ash went to more deals than he could buy discounted. So his conversion rate wasn't as strong as mine, but he got more deals than me overall, mainly because he was focusing full time on the deal sourcing, whereas I was, working more with the investors and then doing a bit of deal sourcing. So with the deal sourcing, if you can really test it with those 45 pieces of research, plus then you work out about 5 exit routes. So plan A would be you flip it at the price that you've assessed it's going to be. Plan B, you HMO it. Plan C, you single let it. Plan D, you service accommodation it. Plan E, you might put it out to a charity or local authority for vulnerable housing. And then plan F, you buy, refurb, finance and rent out, or the investor does and pays you out your share, whatever. You have multiple exit routes in terms of it paying for itself as an asset. Plus you've done 45 pieces of research. That's pretty strong. Plus you've really figured out what the refurb should be in advance. And ideally you've gotten anything up to 3 quotes, or by the time we ended up having 9 sets of builders we worked with, but 3 at any one time. So we pretty much knew our pricing. So although there's things that could go wrong, like dry rot had all of that, roofs needing redone in a hurricane had all, well, not hurricane, but, massive storm had that. There aren't that many things that can go wrong if you've done a lot of careful due diligence.
yeah. And
And
it's working with other people, isn't it, as well, to get that proof of concept that it can be done, and having that support group there, having the mentor, the accountability partner,
yes,
just to, especially if in the early days, I think that really fast tracks your progress. Would you agree?
100%. In my early days, well, I remember doing an article with YPN in 2009, and I remember I hadn't slept the night before because that investor just about to pull out of a deal. Well, as I was driving in to see Ant to do this article, you think, so you are like a swan who's paddling underneath and kind of swimming on top, but so how can you evidence that the deal is good? By doing your research, by being really careful. And then your other part of the question, I'm sorry, my brain still isn't quite 100% working.
Do you know what? I don't
Okay.
even know either.
Oh,
Obviously, was not important.
yes, but how do you find investors? 1 in
Well,
20.
just yeah, I suppose it's having that belief, isn't it, that possible. So I think just for people who are new, they might say, okay, well, I might meet somebody with, £500,000, but um, at the end of the day, you've just got to have the guts to go for it and say,
Yes,
okay, I've done my research. I've done everything that I can do. I'm
yes,
comfortable. It all stacks. Now let's just bite the bullet and go ahead. And it just
yes.
becomes a mindset thing that you have to just get on with, basically.
I agree, and also I think when like when I used to go to property events, Kevin Wright, who's a lovely friend of mine, said when he first met me, like 2009 2010, he went, I've heard about you, and I was like, oh, what do you mean? And he goes, well, they say you're very decent, they say you're a very good person, but you're a tank, and I'm a girl, so I was like, oh, Kevin. But what he meant was, and he was completely correct, unfortunately, is when I went to a property event, I didn't just go and kind of go, oh, I'm here. I was like, okay, why am I going? What's my purpose? And my purpose was to find investors. And so I collected all the business cards. I followed them up by phoning them 5 times after I'd collected their business card. So he's quite right. Simon Zutzi, who again, I've got huge admiration for. I used to speak at his events, and an event in London. They'd said, oh, you can't actually collect cards in the room. So I stood outside the door and collected everybody's card before they went in. And quite correctly, his office phoned me, went, Susannah. And I was like, I know, but that's what I'm here for. So I had a queue of 200 people and I was like, here's my card, can I have yours? Here's my card, can I have yours? And they were right to tell me off, but that was my job. My job is to
Ask
collect
for
contact.
forgiveness, not permission.
We still really appreciate each other. And he was just like, oh, Susannah Cole. Yes. But that's, so I think the difference is, and I think if you only collect 3 business cards, you're never going to find an investor. So then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh my goodness, nobody wants to invest with me. Well, you haven't asked enough people. 1 in 20.
And do you think the investor comes first or the deal?
It is chicken and egg, isn't it? Okay, so my advice, having seen my own behavior, and then I have taught thousands of students over the years, and I've really enjoyed observing their successes, is if you do 40% working on your business, like for everyone listening to this podcast, you're learning, right? Tick, there's a 40% hour. Good for you. And if you do 30% of your time on deals and 30% of your time on investors. Now, it doesn't mean to say you're going to split your week up that way. You might do like 1.5 weeks working on your business. Like right now, I'm doing a lot of VA work. So I'm working on my business and I'm like, why isn't it going faster? And then you might do a whole week on deals and then you might do a whole week on investors. Do you see what I mean? But basically 30-30 deals and investors, 40% keeping your business organized and improving it and getting out of your own way.
Yeah, great. Lots and lots of tips for people. So obviously you mentioned before you've had some time out and been a bit poorly, and now you're back and kind of
Yes.
reinventing what's, the next couple of years are going to look like. How did you find that? What role did property play in your life when you had to take that back seat?
Yes. A life-saving role. I've actually got a bit I'm still slightly, I wouldn't call the word fragile, but I might be a bit teary. So in January 19th, 2021, I mean, I eat organic, I eat organic food, I do lots of exercise, I've got healthy relationships, all the good stuff, right? And I had previously gone a couple of years earlier and it was a misdiagnosis and they hadn't done the tests properly. So I got a bit of a shock. So January 19th, 2021, Susannah, you've got cancer. And it was, if you can imagine a skier skiing downhill the slalom, when they do those really tight turns and the slalom kind of poles whip their legs. I had numerous whips. That's the best way to describe it. So I ended up not just with 1 cancer, but 3 entirely unconnected cancers in the same year. Wow. So the hospital, and I actually, we don't need to go into any detail, but the main department was incapable. I think that's a kind word for what I actually experienced. So I ended up paying privately. I spent over 100 grand on my own treatment, even though I'm a major taxpayer. So I was a little bit annoyed with that, but I'm also incredibly grateful because it saved my life. It 100% saved my life. So to be able to just, so what we did, so the hospital's 10 minutes away from here. I'm in Bristol just now, not my house in Barcelona. And on the way back, I was with my daughter and we put together a WhatsApp group and we just went, guys, gonna need you, my loved ones, which is why I've been very quiet in property for the last 2 years or 2.5 years. And I just stopped work overnight, immediately. So for the next couple of years, my properties just kept the money coming in. I also asked the nurse, because it took 3.5 weeks before they could say you've got cancer and this is the stage. So for 3.5 weeks, you really get to know yourself because you're awaiting the results of a scan that could say, yeah, it might be okay, or this is terminal for 3.5 weeks. I mean, that's torture. So I'm a person that likes to know stuff. So there's 3 ways to approach it: fight, flight, or freeze. And when the consultant said you've got cancer, I went, this better not kill me. So we know what I am. I said to my nurse, what happens if it's stage 4? And she said, we stop treating you. We stop treating you. Which may be technically correct, but I thought, no way. So we sold 6 houses in order to have a really huge financial cash pile so that I could afford treatment anywhere in case the NHS said, sorry, we're going to stop treating you. So property allowed me to not work for 2.5 years. It allowed me to spend 100 grand on my own treatment just because of, well, we all know the NHS is strained. There was addition to that, but we'll just leave that there. And it allowed me to have a major cash pot in case the NHS declined to treat me. They didn't, because it wasn't stage 4, which is terminal. So it was, and it meant that I could also have time. And as if anyone's, well, 1 in 2 people will get cancer. So unfortunately, my story, unfortunately, is not going to be unusual. So it meant that what I did was I had time. I read maybe 1,000 research documents, and I could implement all the other things that aren't necessarily nice guidelines, but there's loads of evidence that they can be supportive, because you want your immune system to kick these gitty things out of your body, don't you?
Yeah. And obviously a huge time of reflection for you.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
now you're back. So what's changed?
Love. Because there's a really fascinating, if anybody's got a loved one with cancer, there's a fascinating book called, I read loads of books. I read 120 books on the subject and 1,000 papers. But the best book, the 2 best books was Radical Remissions, Dr. Kelly Turner. And she talks about what are the 9 key traits that people who have a terminal diagnosis but don't die, what are the 9 key traits? And love and support and connection was one of them. And that was the biggest change. I mean, I always knew my people I loved, and I hoped obviously they loved me, but I really know it now. You know, so I've come back feeling very cocooned by an awful lot of love from the people I love. And I hope to keep that feeling for the rest of my life, you know, that safety blanket, and hopefully I can love them as much as they can love me. Now, I know we're veering away from property, but that was the biggest change. And then the second one was just being more mindful of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic state. So making sure I switch on my parasympathetic, my rest and digest state every day. And it's great because property bought me a flat in Barcelona for cash. So I spend 50% of my time near the sea in Barcelona. I jump up and go to the sea every day. But I'm back now, and I'm excited to be in property, but I'm very grateful that I already have a property portfolio built. So what I've been doing now is working with planning consultants to add even more value to my current property portfolio. I was like, stop it, Sus. I've already found 3 deals in Barcelona that are discounted. I'm like, stop it. Don't do it. And I'm like, woo! So I'm learning how to buy in Barcelona, and then I'll be buying commercial in the UK. But I'm actually going to personally, only because of my health circumstances, I'm completely clear and out of my danger remission time as well. Very fortunate that was only 2 years. But I had 6 operations, chemo, radiotherapy. So, you know, I definitely know the inside of a hospital. So I definitely I'm just going to wait another 6 months of gentleness before actually purchasing. So at the moment, what am I doing with my money? I'm angel investing with others and teaching people.
Wow, okay. So you're becoming the investor.
Yeah.
So how does that outlook, given everything that you've gone through, now becoming the investor for other people?
Yes.
And obviously you're mindful, okay, about the future
Yes.
and perhaps looking at that differently.
Yes.
Has that influenced how you invest now, or who you invest with?
So if we think about that triangle we talked about again, of the kind of 5 million, the 100 grand and the 50 grand, in the top part of the triangle. And remember I said those guys will take longer to incubate and recruit in the first place, but then they want a rinsing and repeat. And that's exactly me. So my strategy, obviously I've had amazing students, and I've got very dear friends that I invest with quite regularly, sometimes in the hashtag save my bacon for, you know, can I have 32 grand for 2 weeks? Yeah, no problem. Here you go. Because I've done that as well. You know, a really dear friend of mine, Anthony, lent me 20 grand for like 2 days. I was like, thank you, Anthony. This is a long time ago. So I took a long time to become an investor. And then I rinse and repeat with the same people. And then my approach to investing is observing people very quietly. I want to see them make mistakes, and I want to see them recover from those mistakes. My number one criteria is, can they recover from mistakes? If so, I'm in. And then, so we're talking in kind of back end of summer, beginning of autumn 2023. I will be approaching people saying, I'd like to invest with you in 2024. So I'm giving 6 to 9 months notice in advance because I expect my plans to be stable and I expect their plans to be stable, even though I know, because I was the other side of that, that they are like swans gliding on the top and going crazy underneath, you know. So I want to identify and give stability to my investing and stability to my partners. Expect my money then. You know, this is the amount of money I'm talking about. So it's so that's not somebody where you have to drag the money out of them. That's somebody saying, I've identified who I want to work with. This is the amount of money I've got. This is the time frame that would work for me. How does that fit with your business plan?
Right. Wow. Well, a few lucky phone calls then.
I'm always surprised though how few people ask me for money. And if I get deluged after, great, you can practice on me, but I'm super surprised at how few people ask because there is so much money out there. And if you
There's a
are,
huge like timing issue, isn't there, between someone who's got the
yes,
deal and someone who happens to have the money at the right time. I think
yes,
that's such a, I was raising some money a couple of weeks ago and went to my list of investors, and some of them are all tied up and some of them,
yes,
whatever. And it's just getting that timing right. But I think that's brilliant what you've just said there. If you've got the foresight to be able to say, okay, in the next 6 months, I've got, some funds lined up, be ready.
yes,
That's a huge advantage for anyone.
yes. And
That's
then
really
I'm
cool.
not going to remind them. So if they don't come back to
Yes.
me, they drop a little bit further down on the
Yeah,
list because
yeah,
they're
yeah.
not organized enough. And so it's all an assessment, actually. But a good friend of mine is right in the thick of it right now, buying, oh golly, 35 units this year, right? And we KPI every 2 weeks. So we're at different stages of our career, sure, but we're able to observe, like you said, you need a community. Every 2 weeks we have KPIs, key performance indicators, and we kick each other's butts. Let me be quite frank. And for the last 6 months, I've been going, I haven't been saying you're going to run out of money, but that's what I've been meaning. I've probably said it with some very
Can see
straight.
it coming.
Yeah. Mate, you need to keep raising money. Mate, you need to keep raising money. Mate, you need to keep raising money. And he just, the banks didn't deliver in time and he just raised £1 million, like literally last week because I went to see the house. Because he, not necessarily, we'd kind of half listened to me. He's like, all right, stop bugging me. Because you just got to keep cranking the handle. Because as you say, if you don't quite have enough investors on your list and you need the money when their money's out, well, that just tells you need more people on your list. I hope you got the money, by the way.
Yes, I did.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you. It is that having the pipeline of investors and pipeline of deals. And
Yes.
it's the dance, isn't it? Just making both match. And if you get the right timing on both sides, then happy days.
Yeah. And I
And
think
not
it's
getting too
almost
desperate.
depersonalizing it. Some of your investors who couldn't support you in this time, it's nothing to do with you. It's just their
No.
money. And also going, okay, so what's the lesson here? Not in your case, but what's the lesson here if people are saying no right now? So have I spoken to them enough? Have I asked them to pledge? Have I shown them enough deals? Have I walked them around sites if I have any sites? And have I got enough in my pipeline? And do I like them? And so it's, instead of going, oh my gosh, you can't raise money, it's, well, maybe my processes are not quite where they need to be. And so I just need to shine them up a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're so right about the processes because, gosh, life goes really quickly and
Oh,
suddenly 6 months, 2 years, and you're like, wow, I've not spoken to this person in so long.
yes.
How has that happened? It's not even
Yes.
intentional, or, because it seems like it was only 6 months ago, but
Yes.
having those processes in place, I think you're right there. It's really important.
So can I tell you, just to maybe share with the guys, so I remember with one of my lovely mentees, we went to a property event in Wales and there was maybe 60 people or something in the room. And I was like, right, I'll race you. I mean, I didn't need to raise any money by that point, right? But I was like, okay, I'm going to race you. Let's see how many business cards we can collect. And because I like competition, but in a way that if I win and then you beat me, I'm loving it, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna see you raise you kind of thing. So I didn't care really who won, but I just love the game. So James, so he went round, I forget what number he got, but I got most of the room. So when I go into a property room, or when I was raising money, I count how many people are in the room, and I need 2/3 of the business cards minimum.
Wow.
Minimum. And
And do you ask them if they're investors or just
no, no, you just, what are you do? What are you doing in property? What's your objective? What's your time frame? And how much is your pot? So, for example, with me, what's your objective? Well, to use my, I've got money in the bank. I'm not going to raise my stress level, just for gentleness, for another 6 months. So I'm not going to run a project myself for another 6 months, even though I've got the competency, just because let's just come gently. It was quite a traumatic experience. So let's just love ourselves and come out gently from that experience. So that's my objective. So it's never like, I want 10% return. It's always an emotional or human objective. What's your time frame? Well, probably till like the second quarter or first quarter of 2024. Okay, great, 6 months. And then how much is your pot? Well, it's this much. How quick can you get that information from somebody? So I would ask every single person within 2.5 minutes, I got the information, I'd write it down. And then I'd say, you're here to meet people, so am I. I will give you a call tomorrow. Look forward to it. And I'd move on. So that's why Kevin Wright, my lovely friend, called me the tank.
I love it. I challenge everyone next time you've got a networking meeting, do that.
Yes.
And yes, you do have to be a little bit brave or a little bit cheeky if you're not used to asking people how much is in their pot.
Yeah.
But say what? If they don't want to say, they don't want to say.
No, it doesn't matter. And to be honest, when we get back to that triangle, the people at the bottom will probably tell you. The people in the middle, because they've done amazingly well to get, I don't know, 150, 200 grand. So it feels a lot. And it is. That's a lot of money. But there's quite a lot of ego around that in the middle, and understandably so. They're kind of pinning their worth on it in a way, where somebody with 10 or 20 are like, oh, I've only got 10 or 20. Don't worry, I can use that, and then somebody kind of with the 5 million pot, with the hundreds and hundreds of thousands and 5 million pot, well, they're just there to do business. So they're like, this is my pot. This is how, so for example, I know I need to keep a certain number of 6 figures cash in the bank at all times, or my mental security blanket is unhappy. So I'll be like, this is my pot and this is how much I need to keep in the bank. End of. Let's do business. Yeah.
Right. I love it. Do you know what? We could be talking all day.
Yeah, I think we could.
Good.
And I'm only back. Can you imagine?
Yes, yeah, we have to do a part two.
Yeah.
Before we do, what does the next what does it look like now if people want to get in touch with you? I know you're kind of still easing back in, but where can people find out more about you? I know you've got some fantastic training yourself. Are you doing any mentoring at the moment, or is that later on next year?
I do a very small number of one-to-one mentoring spots, but very small. And I'm very so what I've done, and I was very glad to have it all prepared actually, because obviously all this knowledge, you want other people to, like, I won't say a second name just out of privacy, but one of my mentees who was, there's tortoise and a hare, and he was a tortoise, and he'll know who he is, David. And he asked every question all the way through, and he's like, I'd never lost faith in him. I knew he was going to deliver. Now he's building 5 houses in a cul-de-sac. I mean, how gorgeous is that? So I love sharing this knowledge because it changed my life, and it can change so many other people's lives as well. So I was very grateful and glad that before I had my sabbatical, which didn't end up being a villa in Bali, but was in my house in Bristol and Barcelona, and hospitals, I was very grateful that I had all my online education already there, so people could keep enjoying and benefiting while I wasn't necessarily there. So I have academies online. I have my whole year system online that people can download at, to be honest, quite a fraction of the price of what it would be if you were being taught it live. And then have a very small number of one-to-one. But if people are starting out, I got 9 downloads that are free, including a 100-page pack for free. So they should definitely download those. And then I've got 3 webinars, which they can just grab at any point online, all on my website. So there's a lot of free. And obviously, I've got the YouTube, and I think we're close to 2 million views now. So website wise, to get the webinars, to get the downloads, to get the pack, and maybe some of the education, and I've got deal packager contracts, of course, is thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk. And then if folks want to get in touch, I would be delighted. I would love to hear what people are up to in property and where they want to go and what their struggles are. contact me on any of the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or contacts through the website, and let me know where you're at and what your struggle is. It'll be really fun to talk.
Amazing. And remember to mention your property podcast with us.
Oh, yes.
Just
Yes.
because, I'm sure you get, as everyone does, all the friend requests every day. So, yeah, make sure you distinguish yourself, guys, that you've heard Susannah on our podcast.
Definitely. I would, yes, because that would be super interesting, because I'll feed it back to you guys. But it's also been really nice to kind of re-explore where you've been. So you talked just before we come on that in the early days we met at the Property Investor Awards, and of course you've been up for awards, and it's been really exciting this morning going, ooh, look at all this stuff. Look at this development. It's really, yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? In the property world, you just come across so many people with different backgrounds and different routes into property. It's certainly isn't a one size fits all, is it? You've got all sorts of backgrounds and skill sets. So yeah, it's been a fun journey for me, that's for sure.
Yes, and now you've got a mini you
I've got a mini me.
doing that fun journey with as well.
Yeah, incredibly, it's coming up to 2 years old now. So, and you know what? As you say, there with property, it's been such a blessing to be able to have like a flexible work-life balance. I'm not sure about balance because I just think it, comes with 2-year-old. There's lots of waves of, you spend lots of time with him or lots of time working, and it just flows. But to have the flexibility, I think that's the most important thing. And with like if he had chicken pox couple of weeks ago, and be able to just take 2 weeks off and just sit and watch Disney movies with him, and just take that time and still get paid through the income through the property, and obviously what we do with YPN and the training as well. So it's it's a pleasure. And if even just 10 years ago, when I was still in the middle of teaching, I had no idea that I could do any of this, or it was even possible, or these things existed. It just it was either I went through this time of what other job could I get?
Yes.
Because I knew that staying in teaching forever was not an option. Certainly not till I was 68 retiring anyway. There's always a plan B, and I'm just so grateful that I stumbled into property and made it, what it is today.
It's both like something you adore and then something that drives you nuts, isn't it? Now
it's fun, right? It is fun.
Oh,
even
yeah.
the challenges that do drive you nuts. You're like,
Yes.
well, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yesterday, because I literally am only a few weeks back, and so I'm effective. And one of the things I always did, I'm going to say it. One of the things I always did well was I built systems quite quickly. And that's why we could scale. That's why I could scale the fundraising. That's why we could scale the deals. That's why we had very high quality education, because it wasn't by chance. It was all studied and replicated and then systematized and templated, which is why I just give all that stuff to my students. So I'm back rebuilding a system. I'm very lucky. There's so much I've already got, but I'm back at the beginning of rebuilding systems and teams. And yesterday was my first is a very minor something. And I was like, oh, that means, that little like, oh, I need a cup of tea now. And I was like, that means you're starting to push against it, Susannah. Yeah. That means you're starting to move the needle, to get momentum, because that kind of push at the beginning is always the awkward stuff, isn't it? It's always like, oh, there's a pushback and you just have to keep pushing a little bit. Yeah. Yes.
I think you want to be dipping into that stretch zone. You don't want to be in the panic zone, that's for sure. But no one wants to be in the comfort zone forever. Well, I don't anyway.
No,
just
I agree.
coast along. That's not a life for me anyway. I love to be just trying new things and experimenting and growing.
Agree.
And expanding what we're doing. I think that's part of the joy.
And what I know we need to round up, and we could absolutely go on. There's so much to talk about in property, but automation has been amazing. So from when I was self-managing the portfolio 15 years ago to all of the digital automation now, and obviously also for my education business as well, all of the kind of widespread programs that enable you to automate most things. For example, one of my students, Matt, well, he's written, I think, in possibly your magazine in the last little while. He years ago, I think we used to always do a tech IT and people a weekend, because it's really important to realize you have an organization, even if it's just you, yourself, and I, because you're the chief exec and the chief bottle sweeper. And he turned around and he said, in one of her departments, Susannah's paying 140 grand on salaries and I'm paying £1,400 a year. And I was like, dang. So, and it's very true. So even when property, if we can get into automation, it can really cut our costs. It can really help us be more effective. So all of this is super exciting, isn't it?
Well, it is right now with all the AI, everything that's going on with AI and these plugins, the APIs, and it's
Tremendous.
just a whole other world that we're getting to. I'm really excited to be part of that journey as well, and seeing
Yes.
what, how that can fast track. Just get
Yeah.
rid of all that admin that no one,
Oh,
well, that we don't like to do anyway, so that we can focus on the fun things, right? And
yes.
the income generating tasks, the things that are going to really be moving the needle forward.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really exciting time for everybody.
So when you were talking about, oh gosh, a year can pass and you think, oh man, it feels like yesterday I spoke to that potential investor. Well, CRM system with tasks and kind of triggers that tell you. Oh, so for me, when I grabbed a name, this is years ago, by the way. So let's just say you were someone I met and I was going, I really need to raise money because I can do these deals. I would have met you, say, on the Thursday night, or we'll call it the Monday night. I would have called you on the Tuesday, a 1 in 5 answers. So I'd have called you once a day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, until 5 calls. And then I obviously don't stalk you. You answer on one of those calls because you're only going to answer 20% of the calls because you're busy as an investor.
Yeah.
That's that. You answer the call. We have, what's your time frame, your objective. We'll have another call 2 days later. So let's say you answer on the Monday. We'll have another call on the Wednesday. Let's say we like each other. We think we could do some business together. We're going very gently. We'll meet for a coffee the following Monday. We'll meet for a coffee the following that Thursday. We'll probably meet again the following Monday. We'll have gotten to 5 to 9 touch points within about 3 to 7 weeks. So you are either, in the nicest way possible, on my list for potentially being an investor, or off short of 2 months of me meeting you. And then you just roll out that process for lots of people until you find amazing people that you like and they like you, and jobs are good. And
I love it. Well, I'll be sharing this little snippet with lots of people I know because I get asked this question a lot. So that's a great answer there. So yeah,
good,
fantastic.
good. Well,
Well,
I'm looking forward.
let's wrap up. Yeah,
Yes,
we've got lots more that I'm sure we can
yes.
touch base maybe next year and find out what's changed.
I would love that. And it would be so much fun to see where things are going for you as well.
Soon. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Susannah. It's been
Okay.
great. I'm looking forward to watching what's happening next for you.
Grand. And good luck to everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks to everyone for listening again. And if you're not yet a subscriber to the magazine, click the link in the show notes for your free 30-day trial. We'll put all the links to Susannah's company in there so you can just get access to everything she's talked about today and follow her on the socials. I'll see you next time, guys.